Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires campaign review, this time covering Malakai Makaisson. So there's been a bunch of new lords added with Thrones of Decay, Malakai Makaisson being one of the paid lords that you can just purchase individually if you want, and of the new lords added, this one I think is my favorite. This is the one that I've played the longest campaign on. I did a 3-part live stream, and then I've been continuing this campaign in my own time. And I've honestly been having a blast with it, literally. So there is just an absolute ton going on in this campaign, which is great. Because one of the problems that I've had with Total War Warhammer 3, I get campaign fatigue fairly early on. I get to about turn 30, 40, 50, and I just find that nobody's really putting up a fight. The AI enemy factions don't really form big power blocks, and so I'm just sort of steamrolling, and there's sort of a lack of direction and reward for conquering the whole map, especially considering I've been at Total War Warhammer since the beginning. You get a little bit of fatigue doing the same thing over and over again. But with Malakai's campaign, there is set objectives that give you tangible rewards to just keep going and give you a really good incentive to play a longer campaign. So let's firstly, there's a lot of things to unpack here. Let's firstly talk about Malakai Makaisson himself as a lord. So he's a really versatile character, being a slayer character, decent in melee, also an engineer. His skill tree, you can really do so much with him. Whether you want to go with a balanced army or a unit spam or something like a bigger doom stack like the Thunder Barges, it's really entirely up to you. I went with gyrocopters because honestly this felt really good with him because he provides a bunch of bonuses with them, and it just was fun to use them using Malakai. Now this is a unit that previously, before the patch 5.0, I was not a huge fan of gyrocopters, but when it comes to gyrocopter trollhammer torpedoes, these ones here are my jam. Seeing them just take out like a dragon with one volley, that's so good. But you can only get one of these. This is how they balance it. You can only get one of these at maximum every 15 turns by maxing out the Age of Reckoning. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So talking a bit about, just continuing about Malakai, he's also the only dwarf lord that's got access to sort of like the Vampire Coast shipbuilding mechanic, where you've got the Spirit of Grugni, which provides pretty tangible benefits in here, especially this one, which at tier 3 will allow the Spirit of Grugni to basically last for the entire battle. So after about 2 minutes at the start of the battle, you can summon it in. At the beginning of the campaign, it only lasts for 2 minutes, which can do a ton of damage in that amount of time. But being able to stay for the entire battle, I've seen this rack up 1,000 kills. It largely depends on what you go up against. Obviously, if you pop this in the middle of a Dark Shard spam, it's going to get shot down pretty quickly. But if you've taken out most of the Dark Shards first, or if there's not that many missile units to begin with, it absolutely obliterates them. I also use the Spirit of Grugni to go into a settlement when I'm sieging a place and just take out all the dangerous units first, and then I send in my army to finish off the rest. So really useful ability there. And there's of course a bunch of other things with the stat bonuses which we've seen before. And also with the Spirit of Grugni summon, anyone that's in your sphere of influence, once you've got it to tier 5 that is, will also have access to the Spirit of Grugni, although for them they only get the base level version, so it won't last for the entire battle. So that's Malakai Makaisson in terms of, he's pretty good on the battlefield. He's a pretty good shooter, got like huge stats, but to be honest, for the most part, I just use the units because he boosts them so much. I just have him on stalk because I've got him with a Prospector's Mail, and just use the troops. So then another mechanic that he has is his Malakai's Adventures. So this is his campaign unique mechanic. If you are playing as any of the other Dwarf Lords and you confederate Malakai, you won't get access to this. Now I have completely finished all of them, and there was real incentive at every stage to do each one of these. Some of the better ones, at least for me, was definitely the Chaos Dwarf one because it was focusing on gyrocopters, a unit that I'm using heavily throughout this campaign, and gives you tangible objectives that are really not that difficult to accomplish with a reasonable buff that provides your entire faction with benefits for those particular units. On top of, having quite a few quest battles, you need to complete however many little diamonds there are on a particular quest is how many of these minor objectives you need to finish before you can do the quest battle, which then allows you can still finish off the other ones, but it gives you a bonus, a significant bonus from finishing that. So for example, the first ones, that's one only requires 3, and the ones after that, these all require that you finish 4 of these minor objectives, each of which will provide you with pretty substantial benefits. Like missile resistance plus 30% for Thunderbarge units. That is just ridiculous, and I love it. So that's really good there. Although something's going a bit weird here. I've completed all the objectives, but we can see here that this one, it seems to have been grayed out. It's not that big of a deal, and you will encounter little bugs throughout the campaign. So Malakai's objectives, I probably finished the last of them about 10 turns ago. So depending on how fast, of course, you decide to focus through it, it gives you a pretty good amount of stuff to do throughout the campaign, because you can't just do all this stuff in a localized area. You've got to go and seek out particular enemies in certain locations. Like, for example, this Skaven scheme, which provides, some of the best benefits. The enemy army, this one here, is like all the way down this way near the Misty Mountains. So that's a fair distance from your start position, which is Crackadrak. His start position can be a little bit tricky, because the starting enemy is super easy. The Magathkin, they're not a problem, but you start off sandwiched between Throt the Unclean, Throg, the Troll King, and to a lesser extent, Archaon and the Demon Prince, and Malice Darkblade. There's a lot of very dangerous enemies in the area here. And this is going to tie me into the next mechanic, which is more to do with the Dwarf rework, is the Grudges system, which I think is fantastic. This rework here really encapsulates an aggressive Dwarf campaign. Basically, the more that particular faction is hated by your race. So, as an example, Malekith ends up fighting, and in this campaign here, defeated Grombrindle, and he accrued a ton of grudges for that. And so I'm settling the grudges that he's accumulated fighting a different dwarf faction, even though Malekith has never really caused me any problem. Every time I've fought him, I've been the one to declare war on him. But because he accumulated so many grudges against Grombrindle, I'm getting the benefits from that. And that's what you want to be fighting. You want to be fighting the people who have accumulated the most grudges. And in this campaign here, I barely ever fought anyone that didn't accumulate any grudges. Like, I had no incentive or no real desire to fight Kislev, because every now and again they have a little bit of a grudge, but you can actually settle that fairly easily by just doing some diplomacy with them. Every time you establish a treaty with someone that's accumulated some grudges, you will basically forgive them of their grudges. And that's very useful, because the amount of grudges that you need to accumulate with each Age of Reckoning is based on your border and how many total grudges there are. So bordering factions that have accumulated no grudges makes it easier to accumulate the maximum needed. But as you can see here, I've still got 3 turns left, and I more than doubled what I needed for this particular Age of Reckoning, getting the max bonuses, which is heavily incentivized to do it. In this particular campaign, I've managed to hit Nollengrom, which is the top level of it, every single time. But in the first 30 turns, I think the second one was really tight. I had to finish a legendary grudge in order to sort that out. Speaking of which, legendary grudges. This is a great mechanic. All of the Dwarf Lords are going to get this. Same thing with the Age of Reckoning stuff. And this stuff here gives you, again, more incentive to play into the late campaign. I've actually really been focusing on this stuff, because one of the legendary grudges, the Final War of Vengeance, basically tells you to go and basically start the War of the Beard again and conquer Ulthuan. Now, all of this territory is red, and the elves are honestly pretty reasonable people. You can trade with them, it's not so bad. But because there's a legendary grudge there and the reward is pretty damn tangible, like I haven't got it quite yet because I only just finished it, but the reward here, that landmark, that's going to be pretty damn good, granting a random ancillary every 5 turns, along with Oath Gold exotic animals. And I just wanted to right the wrongs against the Elgi there. So it actually gave me an incentive that otherwise I wouldn't have done it. Same thing with setting up the underway tunnels, or the underway network, giving you fast travel similar to what the Wood Elves can do. So this particular one, enabling the underway network here, that legendary grudge was set up. Which one's that one? That's the Fallen Ones, which I think this one's a little bit bugged because it's called the Fallen Ones, but Grimgor Ardboys is in there, but the what's his name, Zatan the Black isn't. So I think it's a bit weird because it was clearly designed to be targeting the Chaos Dwarves. I think that's a little bit of a bug there with that one. or a mistag, but it doesn't matter. I took out all of them, and that allows me to use the underway network to fast travel around, because obviously as you get bigger, when moving your armies around can be way more time consuming, and having these underway networks can allow you to get a huge amount of distance a lot easier at it's basically no cost, and just as a timer cooldown. So I think that's a really cool mechanic. And there's 10 legendary grudges for you to get. Then of course there's the legendary lord confederation system, and I think this system here is fantastic. Basically, it's a race for who can right the most wrongs, which is so dwarfy that if you have more grudges settled than another one, you can just instantly confederate them. Even if you were at war with them, you just confederate them because you're just ahead on righting the wrongs. And if a particular legendary lord is eliminated, like for example in this campaign here, Grombrindle got wiped out pretty early on, which is why he only settled 2,000 grudges. And I decided that he would be the first one that I confederated. So got him without getting any of his territory because he lost it all. And then of course I went over to Nagaroth to right those wrongs, which I'm still working on. And I haven't confederated Ongrim yet, even though I can, because we're combined in a bunch of wars, and there's a endgame crisis about to begin, which is going to cause Vlad to come back over here, and I'd rather him sort it out. So you can see here, like, look at the Changeling in this situation. The Changeling has been sitting here for so long raiding, every single turn just accumulating more and more grudges. Whoever is the lord that takes this out is going to get a lot of grudges settled. So I've tried to time it so that Thorak Ironbrow, he's just sorted out a few things over here. This one here is a bit bugged, it keeps coming back. But it should be he'll arrive at the next Age of Reckoning and basically just grab all of these grudges, assuming I don't get teleported on top of. But he's got a lot of campaign movement range, so I should be able to snipe him if I move in there and ambush stance. But that's something that I've specifically timed so that I can access the next Nolengrom, because that's something that I think very highly prioritized. So as you can tell based on my enthusiasm of this campaign, this is like a 10 out of 10 campaign for dwarves. I don't think this is the strongest faction in the game by any means, but this was a lot of fun. I think it really encapsulated the dwarf experience, what it should be like, and the dwarves just don't feel like that sort of left behind race anymore. They're really at Warhammer 3 standards. You've just got so many tools at your disposal now. It feels good. So I'd highly recommend giving Malakai Makaisson's campaign a go, because not even just about Malakai, it's about its entire faction. Just so many layers to it that make it fun, and you can choose the objectives that you want to do, and if you don't want to do any of them, that's fine. You can play however you want. None of these are essential, which is why I haven't finished some of them. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. The other legendary lords will be coming shortly. Appreciate you, and I'll see you next time. Later, guys.